So first of all, I've got some fantastic news for you guys. Remember the Luna the Dog fundraiser? We did it. We completed the goal. I'm so proud of you guys for sharing it around and donating. And I'm thrilled to announce that Luna is now cancer-free. And she sends her love and gratitude all the way from Florida. Thank you so much for all you guys have done. I am so proud of this community. You guys really made a heck of a difference. Hello, noble home dogs. In today's video, we'll be discussing the first couple of episodes of WandaVision. We'll also be reviewing Wonder Woman 1984, as well as discussing Ray Fisher's departure from the DC Extended Universe as Cyborg. So stay tuned. So the long-anticipated MCU show WandaVision is here. First things first, isn't it absolutely crazy how COVID-19 has completely restructured the release schedule of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's fourth phase? A new era that would have been ushered in by the Black Widow movie is instead ushered in by WandaVision, and I'm a little skeptical about the Black Widow movie and how relevant it is at this stage, but I must say, WandaVision is a brilliant start to Phase 4. Well, these 2 episodes that we have anyway. As this is an MCU project like nothing we've ever seen before. In fact, I don't think we've seen anything like this from the superhero genre thus far. As on the surface, what we very much have here is a family sitcom featuring 2 Marvel Cinematic Universe superheroes, and that's not something I ever thought I would have seen, so I'm definitely not taking this for granted so far. What we've got is a very unique opener for Marvel Phase 4. And what we do know outside of the show itself is that it will be tying in directly with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, as well as Spider-Man 3. So while to an unsuspecting viewer this may seem like an inconsequential outer world sort of take on these 2 characters, this is going to tie into the bigger picture, and I think we've already got a few teasers of that in the 2 episodes we have so far, as, again, while on the surface it is a happy-go-lucky sitcom, paying homage to different sitcoms through the ages, as each episode seems to leap forward a decade in terms of the overall style of the entertainment, there's definitely a very dark underlying mystery to this, which puts a brand new spin on the sort of Bewitched format that it seems to be going for. I mean, that's the kind of vibe I got from this more so than anything else. It reminded me of the Bewitched TV series. And it does this in a way that puts the superhero powers in a very integral place to the storyline, while also having a lot of fun with them. And something I was a little concerned about was that they'd rush forward into the greater mystery and not really take the time to explore these different eras of television and explore Wanda Maximoff and the Vision as 2 sitcom characters, but they seem to be taking their time with this. Even though it is only the first 2 episodes, yes, we have got some teases at the greater mystery that's going on, but these are just little segments, and particularly nearer the end of the episode and maybe at the beginning. This show feels like comfort television until suddenly it breaks that kind of multi-camera sitcom format and goes for something a little more tense for just a couple of scenes. It ends up building something quite atmospheric and unsettling to this otherwise really fun show, which is great because it's got fun in spades, and the comedy stuff is all done right. I was honestly pleasantly surprised by the acting chops on both Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, as they both pull off the more comedic takes on their roles really, really well, and the comedy feels like it is in service of kind of lulling you into that false sense of security. It never feels intrusive. I mean, it is going for a sitcom format anyway. In the past, some MCU movies have kind of struggled to figure out the time and the place for comedy and when it's time to be serious, but WandaVision has that down, at least so far anyway. And in terms of the 1950s through to the 1960s kind of filming styles, they've got this down. It looks very convincing. Obviously, it's in sparkly HD and the audio is all crisp and clear. But for the most part, this does feel authentic. It feels like it could be a relic from a bygone era. But obviously, it's got that Marvel spin on it and that sort of emergency going on with Wanda Maximoff. And if you've seen Infinity War, you can probably guess how this relates. Because obviously, the Vision is supposed to be dead. And I get the feeling that everybody has made the same sort of conclusion here, that Wanda Maximoff is kind of losing her mind and and has created this kind of alternate reality where Vision is okay and she's okay and she gets the happy ending that she always wanted with the Vision. As they say in the first episode, happily ever after. I mean, it's safe to assume that's what's going on here, but of course, we could be wrong. I mean, it's safe to assume that Wanda Maximoff is really losing it here. I mean, creating a whole new world because you're grieving a loved one and this helps you to cope? That is pretty mad.
I mean, I guess I could kind of relate to that.
Okay, but in all seriousness, I do think that what they've done here is really utilize the TV format of the MCU's first proper TV show, unless we count the Netflix shows and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in that they've made a show that very much celebrates TV through the ages, and done it in a way that is incredibly fun on the surface. Like, you can watch this, you'll have fun. There's a lot of great comedy in there. They make great use of the different powers that Vision and Wanda Maximoff have, especially in the second episode, and I won't give much away, but it was absolutely hilarious, and Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany pulled it off really well, and it's just so refreshing to have a Marvel Studios property really go in this direction and go the whole hog with it. Yes, we've seen the Marvel Cinematic Universe tap into different genres, but it generally over time sort of started to build up its the Marvel look. This is the Marvel feel, and this definitely subverts that. Now, there are a few moments that I guess are a teeny bit hit and miss, where they've done these commercial breaks in there, and I don't know, I feel like they're a swing and a miss personally, because I don't know if I'm supposed to laugh or not. They're just like commercials, and they're like normal commercials, but they'll include like a Marvel character's name in there somewhere. But I'm not sure if I'm supposed to find this comedic or not, because all they've really done is just thrown in a Marvel character's name in a very standard TV advert. And it feels more like a demonstration of, hey, look what we can do with this style, rather than it does anything that feels natural to the show, I guess. But outside of that, these first couple of episodes have really captured the Marvel magic in a way that we've just never seen before. And it's a really good one that had me laughing, it had me feeling quite tense at certain moments, and it just struck up a really amazing balance. While they are teasing things to come quite early on, I hope they're not going to rush through this and get straight to the explanation as what's going on. I hope that we do get to spend plenty of time with Wanda Maximoff and the Vision, because these two are great characters to have in this setting as well. Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany are really fun in this kind of environment. I really like the side characters that I've set up as well, including Agnes. She's really great. I swear I recognize her from American Horror Story, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But on a whole, loving what I've seen so far. Can't wait to see more. And I really highly recommend that you guys check this out. I really hope you're enjoying this video so far, folks. If you are, it would be extremely encouraging to me if you would hit subscribe and the like button. Wonder Woman 1984, the sequel to the beloved Wonder Woman movie that came out in like 2017, I think. A movie that brought a great deal of goodwill to an otherwise fairly troubled in the public perceptions DC Extended Universe. Man of Steel didn't prove to be what people wanted, but it has its fans. Same goes for Batman v Superman. Suicide Squad is a turd, and then Wonder Woman comes along and everybody's singing its praises. So a sequel should surely be a smash hit. They've got Patty Jenkins back in the director's chair, Gal Gadot returns as Wonder Woman. What could possibly go wrong? Now, I'm speaking as someone that really did enjoy the first Wonder Woman, but I wasn't as bedazzled by it as I kind of expected to be. I think that's kind of the issue with kind of how much the audience kind of hyped it up a little bit. I thought it was a perfectly good, perfectly safe playing superhero movie that had that kind of hard, visceral feel of a DC Extended Universe film, while playing it a bit safer than what we'd come to expect, and definitely being a much higher quality than a film like, say, Suicide Squad. The original Wonder Woman made that kind of formula work really well for a general audience. This movie feels like a course correction for a movie that everybody loved already, which is really weird. As gone is that visceral, very grounded tone of the DC Extended Universe in favor of something that's a bit more 1980s corn. If the first Wonder Woman felt like an evolution of like a Zack Snyder movie back into something that's a little bit more traditional, this movie feels more like an evolution of a Sam Raimi movie. Now that surely sounds dazzling, but in its action set pieces manages to be even more more goofy than, say, 2002's Spider-Man. I love how big the scenes with Wonder Woman feel, but I do feel they go a bit too far in a few places with just how hokey they're trying to make that sort of 1980s sense of camp feel. In the opening action sequence, you can really kind of see that there's a lot of people on wires doing very goofy, very choreographed things, and it's all very deliberately over the top. And like almost every single Wonder Woman action sequence in this movie has like an obligatory moment where she has to kind of bond with a child, even when it's just completely unnecessary. There's a point where, like, mid-battle sequence, Wonder Woman just grabs a child, hugs her, and throws her into a giant teddy bear. What's weird, though, is that this sickly sweet, very candy-colored vibe that Wonder Woman 1984 tries to kind of give off is only really done in the action sequences, as outside of that, it feels much more subdued. Now, I will say this, obviously jumping forward a couple of decades from the original Wonder Woman movie, there is a lot of setup that needs to go on, but I'm gonna say this, there's too much setup, to the point where it does sag in a few places. There's a lot of occasions where I thought, this is kind of dragging a little bit. And there is a lot here that you could just peel out of the movie. For example, if you were looking forward to Cheetah's big screen debut, you might be a bit disappointed, as while we do see a lot of this character, she's only really on screen in her cheetah form for a very brief moment, and as well as that, you could peel her out of the movie. She amounts to nothing but a henchman. She's there just for the sake of a physical fight, as the real main villain here is Maxwell Lord, as played by Pedro Pascal, who's really hamming it up, and he feels... There is an obvious similarity between him and Donald Trump, and they say it's not intentional, but come on, it's gotta be, surely. Pedro Pascal is doing far too good of a job at this for it to not be at least somewhat based on Donald Trump. And Pedro Pascal's performance as Maxwell Lord is probably one of the highlights of the film. He makes for a really compelling character with pretty compelling motivation, although it does always boil back to, oh, it's the children. There's a lot of just using children in this movie for the sake of it. It's like, we gotta look out for the kids. And I get it, but that's a pudding that they've really kind of over-egged in this one. And then there's the whole thing of that chicken suit that we've seen on a lot of the promotional material. That doesn't need to be in this movie, and they have like scenes dedicated to setting it up. It doesn't need to be here. You could just peel that out of the movie and it would be absolutely no different, and it would benefit because you wouldn't have to set it up either. Steve Trevor's inclusion plays well into the theme of the film, but the means to the end that they take is really problematic. And I'm honestly surprised that it made it. I'm surprised that anything like this could make it into a film in 2020. Like, dead set, it's legitimately in kind of bad taste. And it's one of those things where they could have also peeled that aspect out of the movie. They could have kept Steve Trevor in, but they could have just made it more straightforward than they did it. Because, I mean, a lot of what happens in this movie is entirely dependent on basically just magic. Make it up as it goes along, magic. Stuff can happen in this film just because. So there's no reason why Steve Trevor couldn't have been a part of that, rather than having this weird attempt at a scientific explanation, which results in something just incredibly distasteful. Wonder Woman legitimately crossing a big fat red line knowingly, and not only that, acknowledging it, and then not only that, they take it a bit further at the ending of the film. But I will say this, I was pretty sold on the emotional moments this time. The action sequences this time were a little bit more interesting in the third act, at least. That opening action sequence, to be honest, is the tackiest one in the whole film, and they don't go that far with the rest of it. I really like the message of the movie. It is executed in a pretty contrived way, but it's fine. There's a lack of attention to detail in this film. It tries to do something on a massive scale, it buckles under the weight of it, but even just smaller things within this movie, you just think, why would this character do this? What's the logic behind this here? I'm generally a person that can roll with a film if it's thematically coherent, even if it kind of ditches the logic level. But this film does take things a bit too far in terms of artistic liberty, put it that way. And it's also got to be said, some of the special effects here are just dreadful. There's a scene taking place in the sky where the green screen is just too obvious. Like, I just wouldn't expect this from a film of this kind of budget, you know? And there's a bit with a CGI Wonder Woman, like, running across the street, and it's like, did they go out of their way to make this look goofy? Is it supposed to feel like an 80s movie? Because it's so hit and miss. It's so hit and miss. On a whole, there's some terrific stuff in there. The themes are really good, the message is really good, and the emotional moments, they hit home really well. Gal Gadot is great as Wonder Woman, Pedro Pascal steals the show. It does sag in a few places, which did have me kind of checking my watch at times, like, okay, this is dragging on. But, like, when it gets going, it does get going really well. But on a whole, there's just so much you could just peel out of this movie, and the attention to detail with the writing this time around is just non-existent. So overall, in terms of quality, I would definitely put Wonder Woman 1984 somewhere between Ant-Man and the Wasp and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as far as quality goes. It's bloated, it's overlong like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it's quite convoluted and contrived, but also there's just a lot of setup, a lot of really arduous setup, just like Ant-Man and the Wasp. So on a whole, it's very strange to me that they did go in the direction that they did after how successful the first Wonder Woman was. Yeah, it's a very strange and bizarre movie. Overall, I like parts of it, but I can't safely recommend this one. Also, Hans Zimmer's score is so good that it's able to convince me that this movie's better than it is at times. Welcome back to Comic Book Movies, Hans Zimmer. I've missed you. If you're really enjoying this video so far, be sure to check out the Patreon link in the description below or the join button to help support this channel and unlock a few little perks. I remember how the DC Extended Universe began. I remember being a little skeptical about Man of Steel, but once I'd seen it, I was sold on this brand new version of Superman and the DC Universe. I absolutely adored the movie, and then there was the announcement at San Diego Comic-Con that the sequel would feature Batman and Superman together for the very first time. And we saw that Ben Affleck would be playing the role in the first grey and black Batsuit since the 1960s, and everything was just looking like a dream come true. DC films were stealing the spotlight at every single Comic-Con. Incredibly loyal Marvel fans were looking at the Batman v Superman Comic-Con trailer and turning to DC fans and saying, yeah, admittedly, that looks incredible, I can't wait for you guys to get your time in the sun. Fast forward into the future and we've got low Rotten Tomato scores, constant straight-to-DVD extended editions, different Batman and Jokers coming and going all the time, Joss Whedon remaking 80% of the Justice League movie, Justice League being a financial flop, no word of any kind of future for Henry Cavill's Superman, the first Wonder Woman movie reinvigorating interest in the DC Extended Universe only for her sequel to fall short once again, and now Ray Fisher and Cyborg's departure from the DC Extended Universe. Now, just a quick catch-up for everybody that doesn't know already. Upon the announcement of the Snyder Cut release, Ray Fisher took to Twitter to open up and speak out about the gross misconduct of higher-ups at Warner Brothers during the filming of Justice League. How he and other actors involved were mistreated by Joss Whedon, who was enabled by Jeff Johns and Walter Hamada, commencing into an investigation of the misconduct during the filming of Justice League. And it seemed very much that the more Ray Fisher informed potential audience members of what went on behind the scenes, the more that Warner Brothers would be announcing for the DC Extended Universe going forward. Things that longtime fans had been wanting answers to. When Ben Affleck would be returning as Batman, Michael Keaton reprising the role for the upcoming Flash movie, and fans were naturally eating it all up, all the while Ray Fisher was trying to speak out about the more insidious side to this studio. Now, my understanding is that Ray Fisher tried to go to Walter Hamada, the president of DC Films at Warner Brothers, and get him to properly escalate the claims of abuse on the part of Joss Whedon, John Berg, and Jeff Johns to a proper and thorough investigation that would get the truth out. And Walter Hamada was quicker to interfere with the investigation, trying to cover up for Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon, than he was to actually look into the claims against them. In spite of Hamada's interference, Ray Fisher's investigation was a success, as Jeff Johns' gross misconduct was exposed, and Warner Media cut ties with Joss Whedon. Now, given that Walter Hamada had tried to interfere with said investigation, as far as Ray Fisher was concerned, the work still isn't done here. There are still high-ups abusing their power, which meant that he couldn't comfortably work on any project under Walter Hamada after the kind of person that he had proven to be. Somebody that was willing to cover up for people that committed gross misconduct during the production process of Justice League, effectively giving Warner Media an ultimatum. They could hold Walter Hamada accountable for the interference during the investigation of the Justice League production, or they could cut their ties with Ray Fisher as Cyborg. The latter came to pass as Warner Brothers confirmed with Ray Fisher that he would not be returning to play Cyborg as originally planned in the Flash Solo movie, and we can't expect any further appearances from Ray Fisher in the DC Extended Universe. Now, given that Warner Brothers is a big media corporation that cares a great deal about the kind of face of their company to the general public, it's unsurprising that they might have viewed Ray Fisher as some kind of troublemaker. The reality of the situation is the film industry is not what budding film students think it is. It's not this place where the budding film student can go tell a corporate executive how much Martin Scorsese changed their lives and then they can get to go on to make their auto masterpiece under Warner Brothers. There is more often than not a lot of coercion and discrimination, and that is one area where the film industry and the elites running it have a lot to learn. And actors such as John Boyega and Ray Fisher have been really stepping forward and speaking out for a reform of the film industry, making it a much fairer environment where the elites cannot just get away with anything. Now, if it helps you guys relate to this a little bit more, I think this is an intrinsic problem with any industry with any kind of hierarchy. How many of you have worked a retail job and had your boss treat you like absolute shit and had there be absolutely no consequence for them, nor have you had any kind of leg to stand on even though you're morally in the right? Which is why Ray Fisher's claims are really not hard to believe. Not only that, but they were proven by the investigation, and it is pretty evident in the final film itself that something definitely went wrong during the making of it. Not only that, but Ray Fisher versus Warner Media was not a battle that Ray Fisher was ever likely to win. And I think he knew that, so this obviously wasn't some ploy for attention. He knew that he was actively putting his acting career at risk in doing this. But in the process, he has successfully managed to get people talking about the accountability of Hollywood elites. And that is a very important step in the reformation of the Hollywood film industry. Which is another reason why the removal of Ray Fisher from the upcoming Flash movie is a very bad look for Warner Brothers. Ray Fisher called upon an investigation against some of their higher-ups, it was proven that he was in the right, and now because he wants to see the DC Films president held accountable for trying to interfere with said investigation, he's been removed from future projects? That is a very off-putting look for Warner Brothers. And already the media outlets are starting to cover this up, spinning Warner Brothers as the good guy and Ray Fisher as just a simple troublemaker. As more comes out about this, you can bet there'll be more exciting announcements to come about the DC Extended Universe. Not that that wasn't inevitable, but I get the feeling they might be leaning harder into the fan service in days to come. But there's also just so much else working against Warner Brothers as well. For example, there is far more evidence pointing in the direction that Amber Heard was abusive towards Johnny Depp than there is that Johnny Depp was abusive towards her. While there has been no final outcome in any court case, not counting the libel case against The Sun, Amber Heard gets to keep her role as Queen Mara while Johnny Depp was asked to depart the next Fantastic Beast movie. In fact, there are now reports that Amber Heard might be starring in a Queen Mara spin-off series coming to HBO Max. And if that turns out to be true, you can bet I'll be joining a boycott on that. Speaking of which, in today's episode of That Bitch, it's come out that after her divorce with Johnny Depp was finalized, Amber Heard claimed to donate her $7 million settlement to children's medical trusts, yet they're still waiting on that donation. According to her representatives, she still intends to do this, but the divorce was finalized in 2017. Get on with it, you abusive asshole. With that being said, a donation was made in Amber Heard's name to a children's medical trust for $111,000, as made by one Johnny Depp. Legitimately, if you're still able to stand up for Amber Heard, just stop, because she's not going to fuck you. But there you have it. From this outward impression, Warner Media appears to be a studio that will sooner side with abusers than the victims, just because it's easier that way and it looks better on them. What a fucking circus. So now we're going to take a little moment to look at some of the comments of the previous video and just respond to those. So while the Warhol says the Avengers game should have missions for each Avenger, Ms. Marvel can find Inhumans to save, Iron Man would steal back stolen Iron Man tech, Black Widow has stealth missions, Hulk would destroy an entire AIM base by crushing enemies and ramming through walls, Thor would go to Asgard and attack AIM attackers, and Captain America would do parkour challenges. This I definitely think would remedy the lack of variety in the single single-player gameplay at the very least. But I think my absolute favorite thing about the Avengers game is the multiplayer, which I do think this would interfere with. I think if they could maybe make like a separate multiplayer mode and then incorporate this with a little bit of crossover between the two, I think they'd have a great Avengers game there. So thank you so much for your comment. So Game Jutsu says, if anyone does want to play the LEGO Marvel games, I recommend the first one. It's agreed by many to be the best LEGO Marvel game, and in general one of the best LEGO games ever. There's 3 games in total: LEGO Marvel Superheroes, Marvel's Avengers, and Marvel Superheroes 2. I played all 3 and none of them really match what the first did. The first game was allowed to use the X-Men and Fantastic Four, so the roster, interactions, and story were all great. The next 2 games weren't allowed this, so the roster suffers a bit, but overall, the gameplay and story, Marvel 2's anyway, of the next 2 felt more stunted to me. Little decisions combined to make the experience less enjoyable. For example, flying characters control worse than the next 2 games for some reason. The next 2 games aren't bad at all, but I recommend playing the first one before them. So, I've played the first game the whole way through, and I'm about, I guess, midway through the second one, and I must admit, I don't share your opinion of the flying characters, controls, and stuff like that, but I will say, I do miss the Fantastic Four and X-Men characters in the second one. They add a lot to the Marvel Universe, and added a lot to making the first one feel like this big, grand Marvel epic that was like nothing we'd ever see on, say, the big screen at the time. This second one definitely doesn't have that, but I would say it makes up for it in kind of the variety of the level designs, and I also really do love the story with Kang the Conqueror transforming New York and a bunch of other eras into Chronopolis. I feel like they really made up for the absence of the Fantastic Four and X-Men with that. As well as that, I do feel like there have been a lot of gameplay improvements. I think my one criticism would be that Spider-Man's new voice actor in LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2 is an acquired taste, put it that way. But I haven't played the second one. I haven't played LEGO Marvel Avengers, so I guess I'll have to check that one out as well. And maybe replay the first one after finishing the second one, just to form a proper, more recently informed opinion. Thank you so much for your comment, Game Jutsu. J. Bobco says, the whole Michael Keaton Batman thing was debunked like a week ago. This was debunked by Barnes himself, as he thought the question meant Flashpoint. Hamada meant that there will be 2 consistent Batmen, Pattinson and another who is yet to be even cast, not Michael Keaton. Yeah, so it does seem that this has been debunked now, that Michael Keaton will not be a consistent, reoccurring Batman throughout the DC Extended Universe, which I think is a sensible way to go. Either way, I'm looking forward to seeing his return in Flashpoint, but as I said, I don't know if he's the perfect choice as a long-running Batman in the DC Extended Universe, so being as that doesn't seem to be the case now, at least, not for now anyway, yeah, that's fair enough. I look forward to seeing who the next Batman is going to be. Well, that about wraps up today's installment. What do you think, guys? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below are different links to different social media feeds, as well as my Patreon and my join button, for if you're feeling extra supportive and extra generous, but of course you don't have to do that, that's a big ask. Thank you so much for watching, Home Dogs, and have a great day.